This is Face the State on Montana's news station.
Good morning and welcome to this very special edition of Face the State. I'm Tim McGonigal. Today we're examining the Montana-China connection. Back in March, longtime U.S. Senator from Montana, Max Baucus, left Capitol Hill to become the U.S. ambassador to China. It wasn't long after that Governor Steve Bullock assembled a trade mission to China made up of Montana business leaders. The delegation included representatives from the agriculture, tourism, education, and government sectors. They set out September 19th for a 9-day venture to the People's Republic of China, and MTN was fortunate enough to be granted access on the mission. And thanks to a grant from the Greater Montana Foundation, we were able to go along on this historic trip. Before our delegation departed, we met for an orientation session at the Capitol. We were given an itinerary and an idea of what to expect while in China. Our delegation made the trip to Seattle, where we boarded a flight bound for Beijing, our first stop on the trip. After a nearly 14-hour flight, we were surprised by Ambassador Baucus at the airport.
Welcome to Montana.
Our days in Beijing were marked by high-level meetings, but also included one of the highlights of the trip, a visit to the Montana section of the Great Wall.
It was viewed like 600 years ago, and mainly in Ming Dynasty. It was really far away from the center of Beijing, but I think it's most original section of Great Wall. It's one of the most important signal of China. If you have never been here, you can't really say that you've been to China. So I think it's a good start to visit something important for Chinese people. It's part of culture signal.
The next leg of the trip took us to Shanghai, one of the most historic and progressive cities in China. On the east side of the Hangpao River lies Pudong. It wasn't long ago the newer part of the city was known for agriculture instead of skyscrapers.
About 20 years ago, it's a farmland of Shanghai. So people do the farming in that area because of the opening up policy. So a lot of foreigners came to Shanghai to do the investment in the area. So now this area is very famous for the finance and for the office building.
Finally, our delegation made its way to Nanning in Guangxi province.
It's also the popular park for the Nanning people.
Along with sightseeing and business tours, our delegation was on hand to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the Montana-Guangxi sister state relationship. The governor's trade mission set its sights on opening up trade markets for Montana. And while the trip had its share of seeing some of the nation's spectacular sights, it also focused on attracting new business partners. From Big Sky Resort to Montana Beef.
That's the state of Montana.
To bourbon from Butte. Montana business leaders are delivering their best sales pitches to potential Chinese investors during Gold Key meetings, matchmaking sessions facilitated by the U.S. Commercial Service on behalf of Montana-based companies. Kerry Hester is the director of the Montana U.S. Export Assistance Center. He says he believes it's Montana's first governor-led trade mission of its kind.
And it's historic. It's to China, the world's second leading economy. And China is just going to continue to grow. There's a lot of opportunities for Montana. Good matches here in the egg sector, good matches in the manufacturing sector.
Call up the U.S. Department of Commerce. They have people on the ground, and they actually go out and they find, for very nominal fee, they set up multiple meetings, literally meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, with only vetted candidates, only people who are actually able to participate and bring positive benefit to your business.
And I have arranged 13 meetings for 2 companies, and 6 for the White Open West, and 7 companies with Big Sky Resort.
In this mission, there are 3 agriculture companies. They want to look for Chinese investors, Chinese distributors for their products. So I introduced about 10 companies, and then one forum with about 5 companies to meet with the 3 company clients.
For many of the delegates on this trade mission to China, it was their first trip to the People's Republic of China. But one of the delegates on the trip was far from a stranger to China. His well-known Montana-based company has been doing business there for years.
I think we find out quickly that it's a global economy, and if you're not in the global economy, I think it's pretty hard to grow, and we're always interested in growing, and so this is a natural place for us to continue to have growth and opportunities for a long time.
Larry Simpkins is CEO and president of the Washington Companies. Based in Missoula, some of their sectors are well known in Montana, like Montana Resources and Montana Rail Link. But they've also built their resume in China.
Well, you may not recognize this names like C-SPAN Corp, where we're the largest container lessor in the world. And our major customers are Costco and China Shipping, actually here in China. We also have many of our ships built in China.
These are no small ships and no small quantity.
And the owner of the shipyard was telling us that they produce 60 ships a year. The scale of that is pretty unbelievable when you figure that some of these ships are longer and larger than the Nimitz. Our copper mine, Montana Resources, sells 80% of its concentrate to your country.
Simpkins, a co-chair of Governor Steve Bullock's Main Street Montana project, says the trade mission taught the Montana delegation some important business lessons, including a need to be present and a need to be patient.
To think that we could come over here for 3 or 4 days and come back with a bunch of contracts in hand and solidify some business is just not the way it works here. It takes a long time. It takes relationships with people that trust you and you trust them. They know more about your company.
While Simpkins remains based in Big Sky Country, there's another Montana-born businessman who came to China 2 decades ago and never left.
Excuse me, Montana barbecue medium.
Western food lovers in China need to look no further than the Blue Frog Bar and Grill. This is the Montana Burger, the Shanghai skyscraper of sandwiches. The brains behind the beef is Bob Boyce, a Bozeman-born entrepreneur whose itch for adventure led him to China 20 years ago. And in 1999, he helped conquer a Shanghai craving.
It was a newly international city, so there wasn't a lot of Western food available. And so I started a small little burger and beer joint, and then just grew the business.
Thanks to a well-done business plan, Boyce has built 16 Blue Frogs in China, as well as 3 American bistros, and he has an appetite for expansion with 20 more restaurants planned for the next year and a half.
It's a big market, and we've built a lot. We spent a lot of time over the last several years building our platforms.
And after tantalizing the taste buds of a hungry Montana trade delegation, he says the trade mission already has a key ingredient for a winning economic recipe.
Montana plays well to the Chinese. People love the idea of open space and blue skies and clean, fresh water, and the natural landscape of Montana is something that captures, I think, the imagination of a lot of Chinese customers. I think the main thing is that there's not that much awareness of our state to the Chinese market. That's grown with Ambassador Bacchus taking over in Beijing. I think he's brought a lot of awareness to the state of Montana, to the Chinese, and I think that's really valuable for us as a state.
That's a Montana burger.
Well, ironically, the Montana burger isn't actually made from Montana beef. American beef exports are illegal in the People's Republic of China. But still, due to black and gray market trade, the U.S. is one of China's largest suppliers of beef. Now, that's just one surprising fact about Montana's 3rd largest trading partner. Members of this trade delegation to China discovered some other startling revelations during their trip. Boisterous markets, a great wall, and fine food. Some things aren't surprising when it comes to China, but for the members of a Montana trade delegation, their trip offered some eye-opening experiences.
The scale is hard to get your head around until you're here. I mean, the scale of the population, the idea that if you want to expand trade, look at there's already 40 states right now that have a permanent presence here. And recognizing that you need to get Montana on the map. Be that with education, be that with trade.
Some of the greatest trade opportunity may lie in Guangxi, a province in South China made up of 12 ethnic groups and more than 50 million people. The capital, Nanning, is a place where skyscrapers seem to be sprouting like weeds.
You know, the construction that's happening around this country is just amazing. You know, and it's not simple construction either. I have never seen so many super scrapers before in my career. Throughout China, and especially in Nanning, I bet there was well over 150 super scraper type cranes in the air, all active, all putting buildings up, so pretty phenomenal.
It's a building boom closely monitored by the Chinese government.
The role that government plays and the more or less the authoritarian nature of their involvement in all planning was certainly a surprise as well.
Montana Commerce Director Meg O'Leary was amazed by the camaraderie and enthusiasm of a diverse delegation that she compared to wide-eyed children.
It was almost like this wave hit us all at the same time, and it was go time. And everybody felt like they stepped into the shoes of being a smart business person, an ambassador for the state of Montana.
Thank you. One day I will visit your state.
Some surprising lessons learned that the mission delegates are confident can be turned into dollars for their businesses.
Any business, and I'm not kidding, there's not a business in Montana right now that alone or in partnership with other businesses could not do business with China.
John McKee is the owner of Headframe Spirits in Butte. As one of a nearly dozen business owners on the governor's recent trade mission, he's confident the connections he made will help get his liquor flowing into China.
And there's not a meeting that I took that I couldn't honestly foresee writing a deal from. And we will be. We will be writing a deal. We will be selling booze in China. It will be sometime within the next year. I'm hoping within the next 6 months.
McKee says as a result of the trip, his business will have to add 2 more full-time employees. Scott Wilson of CTA Architects and Engineers was amazed by the amount of building going on in China, especially in Nanning in the southern province of Guangxi. He's excited about an exchange of ideas with some Chinese design firms and the opportunity for some specialties his company offers.
One in particular with refrigeration systems where we can, there's opportunity to provide that type of design support, and appears to be a demand.
This is Canada.
Rancher Jim Peterson represents One Montana, which is hoping to bring the first beef processing facility to Montana. In China, he toured a pork processing facility owned by the largest pork producer in the world. He says they see a prime opportunity in Montana meat.
This would be a much smaller facility than they're used to buying, but it's something they're very interested in, because when the beef market opens, and I say when, not if, because I think it's going to happen in the next year or so, there's going to be a huge interest in investing in beef processing in the U.S. for export to China.
Well, Max Baucus has been a political household name in Montana for almost 40 years. During his time in Washington, D.C., he scaled the political ladder, rising all the way to the chairmanship of the powerful Senate Finance Committee. And when he announced that he would retire from the U.S. Senate, many thought that he would simply ride off into the sunset. But when he was appointed as the U.S. ambassador to China, it meant that, like Mike Mansfield before him, his public service career was far from over. And like Mike Mansfield, it was his affinity for Asian-U.S. trade relations that would define his next chapter.
Having the U.S. ambassador be Max Baucus in China is such a massive door opener for everybody in the state that while Max is here, it's something that I think we need to make sure that we're cognizant of and aware of, because the people that he's just introduced us to in the short time we've been with him has been a pretty exciting situation.
From standing in the U.S. Senate spotlight to representing American interests in China, Montana is never far from Max Baucus's mind.
Go Montana, go Big Sky.
After nearly 4 decades on Capitol Hill, Baucus became the U.S. ambassador to China in March of 2014. It was then that the Montana wheels went in motion to turn up trade.
We essentially started working on this trip when he was named ambassador, with the idea that with a market and a country of this size and scale, to have sort of that advantage of the ambassador being from Montana and somebody that really cares about Montana can provide great benefits for us.
Baucus was a longtime advocate for trade with China, pushing strongly for the country's entry into the World Trade Organization in the late 90s.
There were some forces back in the United States at the time who thought that thing to do, arguing about China is not matured enough. My view is they're all wrong, that China is doing a terrific job in the imminent sense to look forward, not backward.
At 72, with wife Melody by his side, Baucus shows no signs of slowing down. He's still a strong proponent of things that define Montana, such as agriculture, tourism, and education.
I'm just looking for ideas. There might be an opportunity for an exchange between ethnic studies by Montana students in Guangxi, as well as ethnic studies by Guangxi students in Montana.
And he's not afraid to bring the Montana way to the People's Republic of China.
In Montana, we always go by our first names. We're not governors, we're not senators. We're just Max and Steve.
Well, one example of Baucus not slowing down, not only did former Senator Baucus and current Ambassador Baucus host the trade delegation for a dinner and a reception, he was up the next morning at 2 o'clock to take part in a conference call with Washington, D.C. Education is one of the cornerstones of Governor Steve Bullock's administration, so it's no surprise that it played a key role in the governor's recent trade mission to China.
There are 94 programs of undergraduate programs and 36 master programs.
At a meeting with leaders from Guangxi University, Governor Steve Bullock and members of the Montana trade delegation learned that despite the university size and cultural differences, there are some striking similarities.
Our higher education system has 16 institutions.
Areas of forestry and conservation, law, business, journalism, education, and Guangxi is also known for a large number of ethnic minority groups, and certainly in the state of Montana, we have our Native American community.
So I was invited to come along to offer support in terms of understanding of the culture, and to be someone who's been to China multiple times to help support and provide information for our business representatives who have never been to China about protocol and culture and policy understanding and economic understanding. And also to support the governor in any way I can about China, what's going on in China, since it is his first time in China.
As director of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center at the University of Montana, Dr. Abraham Kim works to promote U.S. and Asian relations and global education. He says it's important for universities in America to train leaders who have a global perspective.
And China being one of the fastest growing countries, not only economically, but also in terms of influence in our world, inevitably, these students, when they become professionals, will have to deal with China in some capacity.
Dr. Kim says educating those students in Chinese social, political, and economic climate is key, and so is overcoming the language barrier.
You know, language is really the foundation of helping to build understanding between people, and for many of our students to learn Chinese will be an important tool for them to be able to engage China.
At the University of Montana, there are about 90 Chinese students, but with all that Big Sky Country has to offer, there's room for many more.
But in a beautiful place like Montana, where you have clean air, clean water, safe location, and a place, quite frankly, where there's not a lot of Asian people, so that you will really be able to fully engage American society and the community, and really be able to learn and practice the speaking of English, because you're embedded within.
Well, one key to landing more Chinese students in Montana might be to land more Chinese tourists in Montana. Tourism is one of Montana's leading industries. From Glacier to Yellowstone, Big Sky to Big Mountain, hundreds of thousands flock to the Treasure State every year to see the sights and spend their money. Some tourism professionals are hoping that this trade mission helps put Montana on the travel list of more Chinese visitors.
You know, it doesn't take much. You show some great photos of Montana and people are blown away. So they want to come. It's a matter of how we do it.
Traveling with the trade mission was a logical step for Jeff Welch, the co-founder and president of Wide Open West Adventures, a new receptive tour operator that packages trips to attract high-end independent travelers from China.
We saw an opportunity when Ambassador Baucus was appointed to China, and there's been a lot of bullishness on travelers from China. It's the largest and fastest growing tourism market in the world.
Jeff says the trip taught him a lot about the travel habits of Chinese visitors, who seem to know a lot about Yellowstone but little about the rest of Montana.
They're often coming into Montana through Salt Lake City or through actually Canada, the Canadian Rockies. And so we're kind of missing out as a state on capturing more of their time and dollars in Montana.
One thing Chinese visitors probably don't know is with nearly 6,000 skiable acres and a nearly 5,000-foot vertical drop, Big Sky Resort is the largest in the United States. Trips like this can go a long way in keeping Big Sky competitive.
We know that our competitors Aspen, Vail, and Whistler have already been to China and have developed relationships with tour operators. The great thing about the ski industry is they understand how important it is for us to be here as well, and they're very supportive of that because we want to open up North American skiing to the Asian market.
The skiing adventure may be Big Sky's calling card, but Lindsay sees even more opportunity beyond the mind-blowing moguls and perfect powders.
I'm meeting incentive corporate and executive meeting planners, which is something that we can work together with the ag industries and the mining industries to host conferences so that they can also continue to build their networks and their relationships in the state of Montana.
It can't be ignored. There's a lot of money here, and as I said, it's the biggest and fastest growing market, and so we need to be playing there.
The Great Wall's got a few years on us. Big Sky Resort is 40 years old, where I think this is centuries. So hopefully we'll continue to be on people's bucket list. We hear that a lot, that Big Sky Resort is on the bucket list. So I guess we do have that in common with the Great Wall.
Well, Montana exports about $100 million annually to China, from Bob Boyce's Blue Frog restaurants to the Washington Company's shipbuilding efforts to Ambassador Max Baucus's continued passion for his home state. There's already a strong Montana-China connection. But as delegates on this trade mission found out, there still lies plenty of room for growth on both sides of the relationship, and they don't want to see the momentum that's been created and the relationships they forged go to waste.
This center is authorized.
This was an action-packed, compressed 9 days. We don't want to just stop there. So working both with the individual businesses, working with the educational leaders, and saying, how can we take the next steps to really build off of this momentum that I think was created.
The business people who accompanied Montana Governor Steve Bullock to China represent the state's first international trade mission in at least 15 years. Their success will be measured by their leadership.
You're not a pioneer unless someone comes behind. If no one comes behind, you were just a flash in the pan. And I believe that it would behoove the entire state of Montana, especially the governmental side, to take a look at opening a permanent presence over here.
And that will be the key to this trade mission, is to follow up. Everybody's got lots of contacts. We've had some very good interaction with a lot of Chinese companies, and now it's time to follow up and see if there is actually something there.
One member who made key contacts is Laura Memhard Fleming with SRS Chris Foley, a Glendive-based developer of water management and sludge removal systems.
So we have products that can be very helpful as China enters this next phase of environmental remediation.
Bullock doesn't discount another trade mission to China during his tenure and feels confident that Montana will host a Chinese delegation.
Governor Chen of this province, who oversees 50 million people, and he will bring businessmen and women to Montana. Discussions with the ministers in the Energy Administration, saying that you need to see the potential that we have, everything from what's happening at Montana State University to what's happening with energy generation.
While the delegation worked to boost business with the Chinese, members quickly discovered they could help each other.
And there is a common thread between us. For example, we've often said in our visits and our meetings here in China that the Chinese can come to the U.S. and have the best vacation in the world, i.e. Big Sky or Yellowstone. They can eat some of the best beef available anywhere in the world. Again, Montana grain-fed beef. And at the same time enjoy some of the best spirits and bourbon made in the world.
And we've had the opportunity as a Montana delegation just to sit down and learn about each other. Montana is such a big state that very few of the people that were on this trip that I've known their names, but have very seldomly had time to sit down and talk to them. And so them learning about what they do and learning about what we do, I think has been a valuable part of this trip as well.
Whether you vote Democrat or Republican, you see all of us being this group of people that really got along, and there's just no, there was such goodwill and cheer and fun and exchanging of experiences that one can't help but talk about the powerful effect of it.
Well, now we've seen the governor's trade mission to China. It had a business side, which we've highlighted here, also a recreational side with trips to the Great Wall and some other places. It also had a lighter side. The delegates who traveled with Governor Bullock and the people he met on the trip quickly discovered that he brings his own brand of Montana diplomacy.
I hope that during a pretty tough schedule,
I'm just having so much fun.
People had not only got a lot done, but also had quite a bit of fun.
Between high-level meetings and fact-filled presentations, Governor Steve Bullock's trade mission to China had its share of lighthearted moments. Leading the way for laughs, the governor himself.
These are stories, these are fables. The Larry's vicious on the mic and the turntable.
Travel and always being on when you're meeting with delegations or things can be stressful for folks. So to try to enjoy our time together, I think was was and is essential. I tried to add to that.
This young reporter I did adore started rapping to the beat.
There is always time for pictures, be it a selfie with the ambassador and his wife, or a snapshot of the Great Wall with yours truly. Bullock seemed to be able to blend just the right amount of levity in business-like surroundings.
I'll tell you what, he is who he is, and that's why people love him. I mean, he had people laughing.
Tell them there should be music. And I'd like my interpreter to sing to them.
He was careful. He wanted to really respect the formality, and so he really played his humor in and kind of doled it out at the right times.
He told Guangzhou University leaders that he wouldn't leave campus without a T-shirt.
The governor is the governor. He is a very large, full of life guy.
That's a large. I'm a large person.
And he let the Chinese people know that even Montana political leaders have a bounce in their step. The Chinese got a kick out of Governor Bullock. Time will tell if that helps kickstart more trade.
Well, all kidding aside, Governor Bullock is serious about boosting trade and educational relationships with the People's Republic of China. And he's hopeful that with good friend Max Baucus serving as U.S. ambassador to China, it's a challenge that can be achieved. We'd like to thank the governor and his staff not only for allowing us to come along on this trip to China, but also assisting us with the logistics that made our participation possible. We'd also like to extend an enormous thank you to the Greater Montana Foundation. Without their generous financial support, our participation in this trade mission would not have happened. We hope that you've enjoyed this very special edition of Face the State today, a closer look at the Montana-China connection. We're going to leave you this morning with some of the sights and sounds of the beautiful and historic Yu Garden in Shanghai. I'm Tim McGonigal. Thanks for watching and have a great day.
Right. Beautiful carving. And also you can see the deer. Deer in Canada we call it deer Louis.
Look off into the distance.
You want one of you in it too?
Into the hole, like a DQ kind of thing?
Però proprio italiano bello. Bello, bellissimo anche famoso. Sono quest'anno molto
Been to Beijing much?
No, less than here.
Doing
Yeah.
Thanks for watching Face the State. This has been a presentation of Montana's news station. Fair, accurate, to the point.